Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit, the podcast that takes, those really dense academic papers and makes them surprisingly interesting. I'm Pavlov.
And I'm Nikita.
We've noticed a lot of you are tuning in, which is amazing, but I haven't quite hit that subscribe button yet.
Yeah, and that little button, honestly, it's so small, but it makes such a huge difference in helping us reach more people with these important discussions.
Right.
Think about a startup, with this amazing idea. Back in the day, just finding out if someone else already patented it, well, that was a huge challenge.
Absolutely. Accessing that kind of information, the world's inventions, it really felt like something only big players or people physically close to certain archives could do.
But something happened, right? Something sort of leveled the playing field.
That's exactly what we're digging into today. How the whole digitization of invention records, specifically the big one, Google patents launching back in December 2006, how that really shook things up for startups.
Yeah, and we're grounding this deep dive in a really fascinating piece from the 2025 Strategic Entrepreneurship Journal. It's called Startup Innovation in the Digital Era by Kwon, Deng, and Park.
Right, and they look really closely at how moving these records online affected how startups invent things, the whole process.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to unpack how going digital changed the innovation game, especially for those startups, not sitting in Silicon Valley or Boston.
We want to see how this digital access didn't just change what they invented, but actually how they went about it.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Before 2006, what was it actually like for a startup trying to research prior art existing inventions?
Well, it was tough. Honestly.
Yeah.
You often had to physically go to places like the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office archives, the USPTO, or these designated libraries called PTDLs.
So your physical location was everything.
Pretty much. It was a massive factor in whether you could even get this information easily.
That sounds incredibly clunky, like actually traveling, digging through paper files. Hard to picture now.
It really was. And sure, the internet was starting to have some patent info, but the early online search tools, the research calls them primitive search engines. And that sounds about right.
Primitive? Okay. Not exactly user-friendly.
Not at all. It wasn't really until the mid-2000s that things got noticeably better online. There were commercial databases, yeah, but they were expensive.
Out of reach for most startups, I bet.
Definitely. And you often needed special training to even use them effectively. So for most inventors, those physical USPTO archives were really the main source before Google Patents came along.
Wow. So you basically had to be nearby or spend a lot of time and money traveling to do a thorough search. That automatically puts startups in, say, the Midwest or somewhere more remote at a serious disadvantage.
Precisely. And that's why the researchers see the launch of Google Patents in late 2006 as this kind of natural experiment.
A natural experiment? What do you mean by that?
It was like this big real-world event that changed the rules for almost everyone at the same time. It wasn't planned as an experiment, obviously, but it let researchers see the impact of suddenly having widespread digital access.
Ah, okay. Because Google just dumped this massive amount of patent information online for free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the cost of searching just plummeted, and finding things became way more effective.
All right, you could use tools we all take for granted now, keyword searches, searching by inventor names, dates, the patent numbers themselves, much easier.
And it was more than just finding the documents. Google Patents also gave you data on citations, like how often other inventions referenced a particular patent. That gives you a sense of its impact.
Oh, interesting. Like a measure of importance.
Sort of, yeah. Plus, you got the full text, the images. It was like turning this scattered, hard-to-access collection into a searchable digital library.
Yeah.
Instantly available.
Then that's the core argument of the research, isn't it? That digitization boosted both the efficiency saving time and money and the effectiveness making searches more accurate and relevant for startups.
Exactly right. So let's talk about how this actually changed the inputs for innovation, the knowledge startups were using.
Okay, inputs, like what they were reading and referencing.
Yeah. The study looked at the sheer amount of knowledge, the quantity, and also the quality of that knowledge.
So quantity first. Did startups start looking at more stuff?
They did. Significantly more. Especially those startups located further away from those old physical USPTO archives.
Okay, that makes sense. They had the most to gain.
Right. Get this. Startups about 100 miles away from an archive. They saw a 32% greater increase in the number of patents they cited, what we call backward citations.
32%. That's a huge jump. It's just they were suddenly able to build on a much wider base of existing work.
Absolutely. They could see what was already done, avoid reinventing the wheel, and potentially build something genuinely new on top of that foundation.
Okay, so more inputs, but was it better quality stuff they were finding, or just more?
The quality improved too.
Yeah.
And significantly. They measured this by looking at the forward citations of the patents the startups were referencing.
Forward citations. So how often those cited patents were later cited by other new inventions?
Exactly. It's a proxy for the impact or importance of that prior art. And again, those startups 100 miles away saw a 42% greater increase in the average number of citations per backward citation.
Wow, 42%. So they weren't just citing more patents, they were citing more important patents on average.
Precisely. The better search tools help them find the really influential prior work in their field, the stuff that mattered.
So they were finding the better needles in the haystack, not just more hay.
That's a good way to put it. And another thing, they started incorporating more new knowledge, patents they hadn't cited before.
Expanding their horizons.
Seems like it. For those startups 100 miles out, there's a 36% greater increase in citing these new patents. They were exploring a wider range of ideas.
That really paints a picture of this leveling effect. Startups anywhere could suddenly tap into this vast library.
Yeah, and it wasn't just patent knowledge either. This is really interesting. The study found they also started using more scientific knowledge, citing academic articles more often.
Huh. How did they connect that to Google patents?
Well, the idea is that digitized search makes it easier to bridge the gap between scientific papers and patent documents. Those remote startups showed a 28% greater increase in citing scientific literature.
Maybe before doing a physical patent search, you just wouldn't easily stumble across relevant academic work.
It's very possible you'd be focused on the patent stacks. Digitization kind of brought these different knowledge sources closer together online, making it easier to connect those dots.
Okay, that makes sense. So better inputs, more quantity, higher quality, more diverse sources.
Yeah.
How did that translate into outputs? What were startups actually producing?
Good question. The study looked at outputs too and found improvements across the board. First, the sheer quantity of inventions went up.
More patent applications.
Yep. For those startups 100 miles away, a 20% greater increase in the number of patent applications filed. More inventive activity overall.
Okay, more inventions. But were they better inventions? Did the quality go up too?
It seems so. They measured quality by looking at the forward citations received by the startup's own new patents.
Ah, so how influential were the startup's new creations?
Exactly. And here the number is really striking.
Yeah,
a 69% greater increase in forward citations for patents from those remote startups.
69%. That's massive. It strongly suggests their inventions were significantly more impactful.
It really does.
Yeah.
Accessing better inputs seems to directly translate into producing more significant outputs.
That's a powerful link. What else changed about their output?
They also started venturing into new technological domains more often.
How could they tell that?
They looked at the classification codes on the patents, the U.S. Patent Classification System, or USPC codes. Think of them like subject categories.
Okay.
Remote startups showed an 11% greater increase in introducing new USPC codes into their patent filings. They weren't just doing more of the same, they were branching out.
Exploring new territory, technologically speaking, because they could more easily learn about those adjacent or new fields.
That's the idea. Easier access lowers the barrier to understanding and entering new tech areas.
Makes sense. Anything else on the output side?
One more thing. The utility of their inventions seemed to increase. They measured this by the number of independent claims in the patents.
Independent claims, those define the core legal scope of the patent, right?
Yeah, exactly. More independent claims can mean broader, potentially stronger protection. Remote startups saw a 17% greater increase here.
So more inventions, higher quality inventions, exploring new areas, and potentially stronger patents. That's quite a list.
It is. And the crucial point the study keeps highlighting is that all these benefits, inputs, and outputs were disproportionately larger for the startups that were geographically further away from the old physical archives.
Which really hammers home that idea of digitization leveling the playing field.
Absolutely. It systematically reduced the disadvantage of being remote.
You mentioned before that the study used distance as a continuous treatment. Can you unpack that a bit more?
Sure. So instead of just saying near or far, they looked at the actual mileage. The further away a startup was, the more treated it was by digitization, because the change from hard-to-access physical records to easy digital access was more dramatic for them.
Okay, like a sliding scale of impact.
Right. And the data consistently showed that the further the distance, the stronger the positive effects of digitization were on things like citation quantity, quality, patenting rates, and so on.
A very clear relationship then. The ones who needed the help the most benefited the most.
That's what the evidence suggests.
And they did a placebo test, too. What was that about? Sounds medical.
Yeah, it's a common technique in this kind of research. They looked at huge established companies, think giants, like Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson.
Okay, why them?
The reasoning was that these big firms already had massive internal resources, libraries, probably subscriptions to those expensive databases we mentioned. Google patents arriving likely wouldn't change their world much. They already had access.
So if Google patents was the real cause of the changes seen in startups, it shouldn't have had much effect on these giants.
Exactly. It's a way to check if some other big economic change happened around 2006 that might have boosted innovation for everyone.
And what did the placebo test find?
Just as expected. They found no significant impact of the Google patents launch on the innovation metrics for these large established firms.
Which really strengthens the case that Google patents' arrival, this specific digitization event, was the key driver for the improvements seen in startups.
Precisely. It helps isolate the effect of democratizing access to this specific type of knowledge.
So, wrapping this up, the core message is pretty clear and, frankly, quite powerful. Digitizing patent records, with Google patents being a key moment, fundamentally changed startup innovation.
Yeah, it really democratized access to inventive knowledge, didn't it? It significantly chipped away those old geographic disadvantages.
The big aha for me is how it wasn't just about more information, but about making it usable. Helping startups find better quality knowledge, more diverse knowledge.
And that led directly to them producing more inventions, better inventions, and even branching out into new areas. All because that barrier to entry, accessing prior art, was lowered so dramatically, location became less of a constraint.
It really did level the playing field.
And that brings us to a final thought, something for you to consider. We've seen the huge impact of this first wave of digitization, making text and images searchable.
Right.
So what happens next? With the rise of more advanced digital tools, especially AI, how might that continue to reshape innovation? Could AI analyzing these vast patent databases create even newer advantages or maybe different kinds of disadvantages? What does this next phase look like for innovators trying to find that next big idea? And don't forget to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you're enjoying the show and want to support us in creating more insightful content, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Every contribution helps us continue this journey of exploration and discovery. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and keep revising and resubmitting.